This is something I want to talk about. I try to stay mostly out of politics because I don't feel like it's the type of thing that people give all that much of a fuck about, honestly. People don't really care about what some VTuber thinks. People don't really want to talk about that stuff most of the time, and I kind of feel as though that's perfectly justified. But at the same time, I wanted to talk about this because I feel like it's important. Now, I'm not talking about this stuff from the perspective of somebody with any political leaning of any kind. That's not why I think this is important. I think this is important because a lot of people kind of let themselves be led down a path that they're going to regret later on by slowly turning into someone that they can't really agree with. And I think that it's important to talk about this sort of topic, and it's important to understand nuance in this topic, and try as much as we can to be as intellectually honest about our opinions on this sort of thing, as well. One second, closing my door because echo. As well as understand why it's important to be intellectually honest and intellectually consistent. Now, that doesn't mean that you're not allowed to change an opinion. Of course not. That would be silly. But at the same time, it's important to understand what it means to be intellectually consistent. So, let's start watching this video by Rev Says Desu. I haven't watched the video, but I kind of know what it's about. So let's see what Rev has to say about this.
Hey, what's up guys, Rev here. So it's been a very crazy 48 hours, especially on Twitter. It's been an eye-opening experience where we've seen people go completely mask off over an event relating to American politics. Now, what was that event? Well, very quickly to summarize, on Saturday there was an assassination attempt against former President Donald Trump. Miraculously, he would only be grazed in the ear by one of the bullets, and the shooter was immediately dispatched. However, the unfortunate news is that an innocent bystander had their life taken by a stray bullet.
This is the important part, I believe. The fact that someone lost their life, the fact that someone died in this situation, and the fact that there are people who are cheering for that. And whether or not you agree with the political leanings of someone, whether or not you think that their political leanings are correct, I think it's important to understand that the vast majority of people who have political opinions, they hold those political opinions not because they believe that they're hurting someone, but because they genuinely believe that that is the best way forward to help the highest amount of people. By treating someone as if they were inhuman, monstrous, just because they follow what they believe to be right, you dehumanize them to a degree that will only ever result in you yourself being dehumanized in the future. Now, this isn't to say that there's a specific side doing this, because this is something that has happened throughout history. This has happened in Europe, it's happened in America, it's happened everywhere, in every country, between every single group. And I believe that the only way we can reach a future where we can truly be at peace with our fellow man and have proper lives without constantly being afraid of being taken advantage of, whether that be by politicians or corporations or even, just your next door neighbor or whatever. I believe that the only way to reach that future is to honestly look at this sort of interaction and understand why it's a bad thing to look down on someone else, not because of something they did, but because of something they believe in. Whether or not they believe in that for personal profit, which, a lot of the times if you hold a belief for personal profit, it's probably not the best of beliefs to hold. But if they hold that belief specifically because they think that it's the right thing, or because they follow a politician that they think is going to, do right by them and the country, believing that that person is deserving of death is a very, very bad thing. Not just because you're wishing death on someone else, but also because it leads to a very, very deep corruption of your morals. And I think I know some of the tweets that are going to get brought up, and I think it's important to look at them honestly and talk about them.
Now, the reaction to this on social media, Twitter in particular, has been absolutely disgusting. And as Chibi Reviews here points out, it has been an eye-opening experience to see how many people lack a moral compass. People on Twitter were glorifying and encouraging acts of violence like we saw on Saturday against people who they have different political views than. It is absolutely disgusting what people are saying, and it's from all over, all walks of life. People are saying these crazy things. You have people even like Jack Black saying next time the shooter better not miss. And yesterday I spent some time and talked about what's going on in the VTuber scene. A lot of people were making various comments in the VTubing scene about this event. Very disgusting comments. We saw some mainly from Tricky, but we covered some other VTubers as well.
One thing though, that wasn't Jack Black, that was Kyle Gass, but it was in Jack Black's venue. Jack Black has talked about it, how he doesn't want his venue used like that, and some people said that Jack Black was in the wrong for, cutting off Kyle Gass like that. I'm wondering how some of those people who said that would feel about their own platform being used to share an extreme political leaning that they don't necessarily agree with. I'm wondering how they would feel about that. I'm wondering how they would feel if they were out with a friend, for example, and then that friend picks a fight with a large group, and your only option is either back out of the fight and leave your friend behind, or get your ass kicked too. I'm wondering how they would react in that situation. It's important to realize that you have no obligation to cash someone else's checks. And any friend of yours that puts you in a situation where you are forced to make that decision is in the wrong. I'm not going to say they're not your friend, because, people do stupid shit all the time, but they are very much in the wrong and should take a long, hard look at themselves to analyze why they are doing that, because they are essentially taking advantage of you.
Today we're going to do just that. We're going to keep looking at more VTubers saying this stuff, and also look at some members of the game industry as well as game journalists who are saying similar things about this event. And before we get into the new examples, I just want to really reflect here for a second. I spent a lot of time going through the comments of this video, and I have to say I am very, very impressed with how people reacted to this video. I am happy to see people from all ends of the political spectrum, people from all walks of life, coming together and realizing that glorifying and encouraging violence over politics is too far. And I'm glad people got there and made that realization together, but I'm not surprised that people were doing that in the comments of my video. So what did we talk about? Well, a lot of VTubers, like these ones right here, making discussion.
So let's go out and read these. By the way, before anybody, you look at this and you see all of their names and profiles, keep in mind, they put this up on their main accounts for everybody to see, so it's only fair that we look at them and understand that they want us to see this. So we have...
Disgusting.
Oh, this is just a joke. I don't think that this is, I think it's poor taste, but it's a joke, and I understand that. This, however, is not really a joke. This is just somebody saying they hope for more political assassinations. Now, I understand that a lot of people consider Trump to be essentially the bane of democracy in the US, but I'm having a little trouble understanding the cognitive dissonance that would be required for somebody to look at someone, shooting a politician, and then from that taking the idea that that's not, damaging to your democracy, it's actually a good thing. Political assassinations have always been a way to usurp democracy. It takes away the right of the people to vote. And right now, it's important to. I keep saying that. I keep saying it's important, but it is. Right now, about half the country of America, I'm not American, but about half the country is leaning towards Trump. Which means that if Trump had been killed, about half the country would have lost their candidate. And if you don't consider that to be a usurpation of democracy, then I don't know what would be in your eyes. It's very worrisome as well that so many people don't understand that. And it genuinely concerns me because it can either be it can be a few different things, but I think that it's two things, mostly. Number one, they're either extremely ignorant about what it truly means to be in a democracy. A democracy means that the majority rules. What the most people want is what ends up happening. That's a democracy. Which means that if most people want Trump in power, Trump should be in power. That's a democracy. That's the power of a democracy. If most people want X, X is what we should do. That is correct democracy. Which means that if you murder that candidate just because you don't like what he says, you're the one who's anti-democratic. You're the one who's destroying the democracy. You're the one getting in the way of voters' rights. Now, we did have 4 years of Trump being in charge. He did nothing, at least, from my unbiased view as a non-American. Trump was not anti-democracy at all. In fact, he was a Democrat for a very long time, but a lot of his decisions kind of aligned with many democratic ideals. Granted, they're democratic ideals from a few years ago, but still. The problem comes when you're the second type of person that I was talking about. See, I said there were two types of people, mainly. One is the people who don't know any better, but the second one, which are the really bad ones, are the people who know exactly what they're saying. And they are taking advantage of the first type. Because the first type thinks genuinely they're doing the right thing. And if you think you're doing the right thing in, yelling really loudly and making a bunch of noise, you'll yell that much louder. You'll make that much more noise. But you're being taken advantage of by somebody who knows they're in the wrong, but who wants power over you. So the first type of person doesn't know any better. But the second type of person, which, I'm not saying any of these people are that second type of person. You can only make that decision on a person-to-person basis. The second type of person are people like, Destiny, who has a large community that he constantly and continuously has turned towards the most radical argument that he can find in order to, turn people to his way of thinking. It's people who know they're in the wrong. It's people who are trying to take advantage of those who don't know any better in order to attain more power, whether that be monetary power in the case of a lot of streamers, or political power in the case of a lot of politicians. As an outsider, I've seen this happen in the US a lot, and it's something that worries me significantly, because you see this happening as an outsider and it just makes no sense until you realize why it's happening. During the 2020 summer riots, it was very strange to see from the other side of the ocean how Democratic Party representatives were going out of their way not just to support rioters who were causing millions of dollars worth of, property damages, which, ruined people's lives, forced people out of their homes, and caused untold consequences, but also dozens of homicides. Dozens of people lost their lives during those riots. And despite that, the Democratic candidates were going out of their way to pay for rioters' bail and provide lawyers and make sure that they suffered no consequence for... I'm not calling it a protest because it really wasn't, but for their crimes. Those politicians weren't ignorant. They knew what they were doing. They were trying to make it so the political environment was so negative that people would not vote for Trump again, and they wanted to win the election. These types of people who are supporting an assassination attempt of a president are exactly the same type of person as the ones who were putting criminals back on the streets so that they could cause more damage and hurt more people so that people wouldn't vote for their political opponent. It's an extreme moral corruption. And it's only justifiable because they've misidentified the person that they dislike as being the worst person alive. And that is why that's such a bad thing to do. From a self-reflection perspective, you should strive to identify people correctly. And this isn't to say that sometimes, there's extreme action that needs to be taken. But it should only be done as a response. Extreme action should not be done lightly. And it should not be done without very serious justification. And thinking that someone is going to do something, thinking that someone might do something, is not extreme justification.
Comments about the situation. However, today we're going to focus on a new one from a VTuber named Pepper. So what is Pepper up to? Well, she made this tweet saying this: "Oh right, since my timeline won't stop and I just saw a similar post, I want to say something about that assassination attempt yesterday. I think they should have had better aim. I'm all for game-ending people who shouldn't be in power. We British people have done similar many times." So this person is openly saying that not only should Donald Trump have been actually assassinated on Saturday, they're also saying they are all for game-ending people that they believe shouldn't be in power.
This is most likely just an ignorant person. But notice how they kind of said exactly what I said before. This isn't about what is right and wrong. This is about who you personally believe is your political candidate. This is I don't believe my side will win the election, so we need to cheat, essentially. And I believe that is very, very bad.
Totally
I think most people
off.
do.
And they would go even further saying this. Basically, I'm saying some people deserve it. Project 2025 could harm Americans a lot. For one, they want to take away women's rights to vote and ban abortions nationwide from what I've seen. And God We've fought enough to have it. If it happens, I will go over there and help myself. This is
By the way, I've heard about Project 2025 a lot. I've mostly heard that it was something that was leaked by some activists. I don't know how real it is. I don't think anybody does. I think it's something that's been talked about a bunch, and I think it's about as likely to happen as the extreme globalist agenda that's been talked about by the right-wing activists in America. You know, the whole "you'll own nothing and be happy" and all of that conspiracy. I think they're both on the same level because they're both extremely destructive ideologies that I don't think anybody would sign off on unless they were complete tyrants. So, if the Project 2025 thing is real, it's extremely bad. Is it real? I don't know. I don't think it is. We'll have to see. Do I think it would ever pass if it was real? No. No, I don't think it will ever pass because there's so many checks and balances in American politics to ensure that something like that can't even be done. Which is why I don't believe it's real. It would require so much of the American political systems to be destroyed completely for it to work that it's damn near impossible for it to be done.
absolutely insane. People like this are so delusional and their worldview is so delusional that they're living in an episode of The Handmaid's Tale, okay? They really think these things are going to happen, that women are going to lose their right to vote if Donald Trump is elected president. That is absolutely insane. And also this mention of Project 2025, I just want to share this funny DM I got. Some people were a little angry about my video yesterday. You know, the video where I condemned political violence. This person said, bro, F you, hypocrite, and F Project 2025, effing Nazi. You make lolicons look like garbage. As a left-wing lolicon myself. Wow, thanks for sharing all of that. Yeah, that's a new one.
Yeah, by the way, just a quick thing. Lolicon means pedophile. So that's what this person thinks needs to be protected. Just say it. So yeah, Weirdo's gonna be weird.
I've been called a Nazi for 5,000 different reasons that don't make any sense, but hey, at least this one's a new one, right? Condemning political violence is apparently a core tenet of the Nazi party. But anyways, back to the VTuber in question here, Pepper. The only thing they would actually respond to when they were being very heavily criticized for their comments about the situation, this was the only thing they replied to. Someone calling...
If this is the only thing you care about in the argument, then you're absolutely the second type of person. You're the malicious actor who's just doing it for attention and power and to weaponize your audience against the people you disagree with. This person, completely malicious. And you can make that judgment based off of how they respond and to who they respond.
them fat. That was the only thing they felt was important enough to respond to by showing a picture of themselves to disprove that. They don't care that they're being labeled as this crazy person who's encouraging violence against people they don't politically agree with. They're concerned about how people view their physical appearance. That is absolutely insane. And like I said, we're going to see many different people from all walks of life getting in trouble for this stuff. Let's focus on a new person. This post made by Mark Kern saying, brand ambassador for Smite, encourage...
Before we talk about this, Grums is also the second type of person. He's just on the other side. I find Grums to essentially just... He mostly just does what he does for attention. I don't think he's ever had, like, a good take. He just takes everything to the absolute extreme. He feels like an anti-LGBT actor, or activist, I guess. Not in the sense that he believes that they are bad, just in the sense, or actually no, not in the sense that he believes the activists are bad or the extremists of any ideology are bad. It seems as though he genuinely just doesn't like people that are different from him, and it makes it very weird when he chimes into pretty much anything, because he'll talk about how a show is bad, and instead of talking about how the writing is bad or how the voice acting of something is bad or how the gameplay of a game is bad, and instead he'll just talk about his agenda of just hyper-conservatism and how he doesn't like DEI and all that stuff, and it makes it very, very weird.
Trump shooter to try again since taken down, and defends her belief that the assassination attempt was faked. Yes, I don't know what it is about brand ambassadors. It's always ambassadors to whether it's Twitch, games, what have you, who say the most unhinged stuff with this label in their bio. It's like showing up to a public space wearing your work uniform and then saying a bunch of crazy stuff. It is a terrible idea. But here's what they said. In a now deleted tweet, they said, if at first you don't succeed, ... a very unsubtle encouragement.
By the way, the idea that it's staged is completely understandable, especially nowadays in America, how much there's conspiracies about everything. But it is very silly to believe that this would be a conspiracy simply for two reasons. So the shooter is a known entity now, and we know that he was a very bad shot to the point that he couldn't get into his college's rifle club, which, I'm sorry, if you can't get into your school's rifle club, maybe put the gun down. So, I'll be honest, the argument of, Trump would sacrifice his supporters to further his candidacy, maybe, I'm not even talking to that. I'm just talking, I, as Trump, would not trust a 20-year-old kid who can't shoot straight to only graze me in the ear. And we know that the bullets were real because they shot and killed someone. So we know those bullets are real, and we know that Trump got grazed slightly. And he got grazed because he moved his head at the last moment to point at a chart. Which kind of means that if he hadn't done that, and if you've seen the footage, it's literally like he moves his head, and in the second that he moves his head, a bullet just whistles past his ear and takes a piece of it off. So the idea that it would be staged is very, 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 very silly. It makes no sense.
Encouragement of people doing more violent acts like they did on Saturday, and then they said,
oh, but by the way, I do believe this is an ignorant person. I don't believe this person is malicious. I think they genuinely believe what they're talking about, and they're just dumb.
This is so staged, though, and going to be very effective, which is a straight-up conspiracy theory. This is straight-up misinformation. Like, this is crazy that they would say this. But they would go further and say, to be 100% clear, I absolutely believe the target of today's shooting would sacrifice his own supporters to further his candidacy. I think that is the ultimate tragedy behind the Trump grift. He does not care about the people who have made him who he is. At the time I made this initial tweet, I had seen that no one was seriously injured in the shooting today. Knowing now that 2 died, I regret using flippant language, but I do believe it is wrong to speculate about the political implications of an assassination attempt. By the way, they're saying
The 2 people who died are respectively the shooter and the firefighter who was protecting his family. I don't know if Rev is going to talk about that, but 2 people did die. One was the shooter, one was the firefighter, which is also kind of why it's like it makes no sense why you would just assume that it's a fake thing. But she's right. It's not wrong to speculate about the political implications of an assassination attempt. There's plenty of times where somebody shoots at the political figure, and it was actually just to rally voters or to do something along those lines. So absolutely, she's absolutely in the right to speculate. I think she has that right, and I don't think that this shows malice on her side. It just shows that she really doesn't like Trump, which, a lot of people don't like the guy. He's a very extreme I wouldn't say he's an extreme figure, because a lot of his policies aren't particularly as extreme. I think he's a very unlikable figure, which kind of makes him likable in like that weird way, like a video game character that's just so much of an asshole that you can't help but like him. You know what I'm thinking actually. This is like a cult leader, kind of. But I was actually thinking more like this guy. Like this guy. He's just so loud and stupid that you can't help but like him. I mean, I wouldn't vote Ogren for president, but I also wouldn't vote for Trump. And I know a lot of people who would vote Ogren for president. So it's like, I generally believe this is the comparison that I'm making. This is the dude. He is the boy.
2 people died. One of them was the shooter, by the way.
Yeah.
And they're seemingly expressing some sort of sympathy for that. That's very interesting.
I think you should express sympathy whenever anybody dies. Like, it was a dumb 20-year-old kid. Clearly, he didn't know what he was doing. He probably, like, not to mention the kid was a Republican, so him shooting at Trump was just stupid. I generally believe that the kid just wanted attention. Like, he wanted to stand out. This was a kid who wasn't, like, mistreated at school. He just basically didn't exist in other people's world. Nobody knew who he was. People didn't know that much about him. And so the end result of that is that he kind of wanted to stand out somehow. He couldn't shoot straight, even though he clearly really liked guns. He had a Demolitia shirt, which means he was into gun tubers, which means he was into guns. And he was a Republican. So he probably had a lot of his identity tied to his like of guns, which led him to be very upset at the fact that he couldn't, shoot straight. And so he probably just wanted to do something like, haha, check this out. See, I can shoot straight. Look, I shot the president. And then he fucking missed and got blown the fuck away by actual people who actually can shoot. So it's like, it's a sad story. You can't help but feel bad about the kid. I genuinely don't believe that this was politically motivated, just from what I've seen of the kid. I might be wrong, but I think it was just a dumb kid trying to stand out.
But yeah, in reaction to all this, they have privated their account like everyone else does in these situations. They say the most out-of-pocket stuff on Twitter, and the second they receive any criticism, they immediately run and hide. So now we're going to move on to the next section of this video, the games journalist who had to say something about this situation, and it probably doesn't surprise you to see these familiar faces.
What? Alyssa Mercante said some out-of-pocket shit about someone she doesn't like who happens to have opposing political ideals to her? No way!
This is like Alyssa Mercante from Kotaku, who had this initially to say, making jokes about the shooter and
Okay. But that's fucking funny. The kid absolutely was a stormtrooper, and yes, he didn't use VATS. Like, although I will say, he probably did use VATS, which is why he missed, because like if you play Fallout, you know for a fact that if you're more than like 10 meters away from the guy you're shooting at, VATS ain't gonna do shit.
Did you tweet and delete these, tagging her on Twitter right here? And the funny thing is, I don't have an issue with these particular tweets. She's making fun of the shooter, which is...
Even if she was making fun of Trump, these are just jokes. These are clear jokes, and I don't have a problem with jokes.
Totally fair game, but I think it's more funny because they would start tweeting and then immediately change course as
Alyssa deleted her tweets yesterday. Both her and Kotaku managing editor are being quiet right now, but are active in retweeting. Here's what she's retweeting and saying. He'll probably
they would make a few tweets on the situation and all of a sudden delete everything, and then instead of actually tweeting, they would just...
Turns out my bad guns are bad and the current political climate is bad and it's all bad, and why do we even bother? I mean, guns ain't bad, stupid people are bad. Guns aren't bad. Unstable people with guns are bad. Let's worry about the government-funded genocide in Palestine. Not talking about that. Weird to see people condemn political violence who are ambivalent to a genocide. Again, not talking about that. Dumbass who stared longingly into the sun during an eclipse stood up out of the Secret Service for a photo op without knowing if there were more shooters. I mean, he was told by multiple people that the shooter had been blown away, and the thing is, most rooftops in the area had been cleared out. They knew that those places were safe. It's weird that that one rooftop wasn't covered, which is why so many people are saying that maybe the Secret Services let that guy on that roof on purpose. But you know, it's weird. It's like, fuck that guy who shot at him because this truly made everything 10 times worse. Absolutely, I think political assassinations always make things worse. Because here's the thing, and here's what I think would be the worst scenario. I think the worst scenario would have been if the shooter had succeeded, and then the half of the country that supports Trump decided that that was justification for a civil war, and suddenly we go from having political debates and people yelling at each other to a civil war and people killing each other in the streets. I think that would have been the worst case scenario, and that would have happened most likely if the shooter had succeeded. Which is why this sort of political assassination is never good, because it just leads to more violence.
Spam retweets, basically sharing their thoughts through other people to, I guess, avoid getting criticism themselves. Sharing stuff like this, saying, the dumbass who stared longingly into the sun during an eclipse stood up out of the Secret Service's protection for a photo op without knowing there were more shooters. And
here are 3 reasons why you should use Codecademy to learn how to code. Now, before I get to number 1, you need to know that
No.
That is just complete misinformation. At that point, they knew the threat was neutralized, and when he put his fist...
Well, no, they knew that the shooter had been neutralized. There could be more shooters. He's right. There could be, like, people in the crowd with, like, fucking pistols just fucking waiting for him to pop his head out. You know, you never know.
Up in the air, that was just to defy everything that was going on and
but
to show
yeah,
strength.
but like, I absolutely agree. Like, he was doing it for the photo op because he knew it's like, okay, this is like gold. This is a golden opportunity. I've just been shot. I have blood all over my face, and so now I'm gonna put my fist up in the air, and people are gonna go crazy. And he did, and they did. It's like Trump is very good at like self-advertisement.
And I think it's really funny that Twitter people like this must think it's staged for someone to show toughness and bravery. They think...
I don't think that that's what this implies. I think he's just saying that Trump is stupid for doing it because it would be dangerous, and he probably wouldn't have done it, which is like, you know, fair enough. I probably wouldn't have done it either.
Must be some sort of a dumb decision or something that's staged. But anyways, Alyssa wasn't the only person at Kotaku who was doing this strategy of just retweeting other people's words. And Carolyn here, we've talked about it before, would do the same, retweeting all these messages, even saying...
Stochastic terror. I mean, both sides have been doing this, though, for a very long time. Like, the people who represent all LGBT people as pedophiles, like, absolutely, you are inciting violence against those people because you know how people react to that sort of thing. And at the same time, the people calling all conservatives Nazis, yeah, you're doing the same thing. You are justifying violence against those people because, last I checked, the only good Nazi... I think everybody can finish that sentence without me having to do it. So it's like, everybody knows what you're doing. You know what you're doing. It's like, it's not that people suddenly understand it. We've been calling it out for a long time. This person specifically has called it out a number of times. They've done it as well, which is why I don't like this sort of account, because it just justifies the same thing for the other side while saying, oh, but you shouldn't do it to me. It's like, no, dude, if you're going to do it, but don't be a pussy about it, right? The worst assassination attempt of all time will now distract from the massive massacre carried out by Zionist forces in Gaza today. It's so weird to me. Like, this guy probably has never set foot in Gaza. I don't know. His name is Abdul. Maybe he's from Palestine. I don't know. Most people who talk about this aren't. You're talking about a conflict across the planet from where you live. Literally across the planet. You could not be more separated from it. You have stuff happening in your country that will have far wider reaching implications, because America is a far more significant country than most other countries. What happens in America affects the rest of the world. Who is president in America affects the rest of the world. So this is always weird how something will happen that people react to, and then there'll be weirdos who really do just want the attention to be focused on the thing they care about. And it's like, dude, quit being weird. People don't care.
Retweeting a message that said that they don't care about Trump's health, basically being very flippant of this whole situation and acting like this entire assassination attempt was taking a
This is stupid. Like, very stupid, this argument of this will lead to violence against vulnerable minorities like trans people. Trans people weren't involved at all in the shooting. It makes no sense. It makes no sense to talk about this right now. There's way bigger things to talk about. Like, it's really just weird.
attention away from what's happening in Gaza, and they had an issue with that. And on top of that, this is her latest retweet saying, political violence is when violence is done to a politician. Everything they cause is a different thing, and you shouldn't worry about it.
No, political violence is actual violence, as in you commit physical harm to someone for political motivations. That's political violence. So, shooting someone is political violence. Punching somebody in the face because you don't like what they say is political violence. Them saying you're stupid is not political violence.
That's a very strange thing to share after an attempted assassination. But anyways, let's move on to another person we've seen on this channel, a producer from Halo. Now you can see they're locked down as well because they made this tweet saying if y'all cared even half this much when it's a school of children, we'd be a much
Really? As if people don't care? Okay,
safer
whatever.
place. So they're using
Weirdo.
this situation to virtue signal about gun rights.
Yeah.
And this is the same person, we talked about this in a previous video, who made a tweet.
I just don't think I could work on a game that glorifies and fantasizes modern guns. So Halo? The weapons in the world is pretty sci-fi, which creates a large enough separation from reality. Oh, so, just like explain in a tweet why the most recent Halo things don't hit the same as the old ones. For people who don't know, the original developers for Halo, they talked about their favorite part of developing Halo 1, right? And the thing that most people agreed upon was that their favorite day of developing the whole game was that one time where they got to go out with special forces soldiers and shoot guns with them and learn how to use guns with them because, they're making a game where you're playing as essentially super special forces. Just a literal super soldier who's trained since they were like 4 years old and is now in his 30s. So, it makes sense that that person would know how to reload a weapon and shoot and move and do all that stuff. Meanwhile, then you have this stuff, which is, this is why Sprint doesn't belong in Halo, is all I'm saying.
Tweet stating, I honestly don't think I could work on a game that glorifies or fantasizes modern guns, Call of Duty, Battlefield, RB6. I've had moments I've struggled with Halo, but the weapons and world is pretty sci-fi, which creates a large enough separation from reality. This is the person who's going to tell you about gun rights, the person who literally can't separate fiction from reality and has a meltdown if guns in a video game look a little too realistic. So this whole situation, the past 48 hours or so,
Open Twitter,
has been
they
very
ruined.
eye-opening, like I said earlier. And I think everyone here should take a look around. I'm probably not going to make another video going through people making comments about the assassination attempt. I think you guys get the point. But still be vigilant. Go around. See what people are saying. Because VTubers, content creators, celebrities, what have you, they're all going completely mask off. They feel safe enough to say these completely unhinged and violent things.
And that's kind of a problem, I think. I think if you feel safe in wishing violence and death upon the people that you don't like, that's probably not a good thing. I feel like there should be a level of reticence in wishing physical harm and violence upon someone. You shouldn't feel safe doing that. And when I say feel safe, I don't mean like you should receive physical repercussions. I mean like, your account should be banned because you're glorifying violence. I think glorifying violence is like one of the worst things you can do. Because you're literally one step removed from violence. And if you have a large enough platform, you're basically causing violence. It's like we know that like about 1% of people are psychopaths. If you have 10,000 viewers, that's 100 psychopaths watching you, dude. So if you make a video glorifying violence, congratulations, you're incentivizing 100 people to commit violence. You can't do that. You have to do better. You have to be better. You know that phrase that so many people like to say, you know, be better, do better, whatever? Like, yeah, that's what this is about. Don't glorify this stuff. This stuff is bad. We shouldn't want this stuff to happen. We should be against this stuff happening no matter what. That's the only way forward. Now, you can say that, oh, but then you don't win the political arguments. That's a lie. Plenty of people win political arguments without doing this. The only way that this becomes the only way forward is when you refuse to ever engage honestly. If you refuse to engage honestly and earnestly and speak your mind and speak to what you truly believe is the best way forward for everyone, that's when violence becomes the only way forward, because nobody is engaging honestly. And if you don't engage honestly, that's all you're pushing towards. You're pushing towards more violence. So, end of the video, guys. Let's try to be earnest when we talk about this political stuff, because this is important. This is stuff that affects people's lives. So the next time you're talking to somebody politically, just do so from an earnest point where you're trying to get to the best result, not just for you, but for both of you. Understand where the other person is coming from. Understand why they believe what they believe, and you'll be able to reach a good solution for both of you. Alright? So, hope you guys enjoyed. I'll see you next time. Cheers!